观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎大家收看加拿大国际电视台大型时政栏目《议政厅》，我是主持人杨毅。自从我做了《议政厅》这个栏目之后吧，我见到了很多，怎么讲？中国话讲牛人，什么学霸呀，还真的见了不少。但是我拿到了今天这一份简历之后，发现还是有一点小震撼。怎么着？我给大家念一念啊。他拥有哈佛大学俄罗斯历史与文学专业的本科学位，哈佛大学啊。牛津大学以罗德学者的身份获得了斯拉夫文化专业的硕士学位，因为这个罗德学者呢是牛津大学最难申请的奖学金之一。那么他曾经是英国《金融时报》、《华盛顿邮报》、《经济学人》的特约记者，还是路透社消费者新闻的总经理和执行总编，加拿大自由党的贸易评论员。特别在2014年呢，是被普京总统，俄罗斯的总统普京啊特别关注，他是13个被俄罗斯总统普京报复性制裁、禁止出入俄罗斯的加拿大人之一。这也不容易啊，就13个加拿大人被禁止进入俄罗斯，他就是其中一位。有请我们今天的嘉宾 Chrystia Freeland。好，那这样子来 introduce yourself.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I think my daughters would like to introduce themselves
Yeah.
to you. Is that okay?
Okay.
你好，我叫 Helena，这是我的姐姐。
你好，我叫 Natalka，我们的妈妈叫 Chrystia Freeland，她的中文名字是方慧兰，她是自由党国会议员，今年她有竞选连任。兴趣是 University Rosedale， 包括唐人街。
我妈妈很喜欢中国文化，我妈妈很尊重中国文化。
我和妹妹都喜欢学韩语。
So how was their Mandarin, Patrick?
哦，他们的普通话讲的真的非常的标准，已经是远远超过我的想象了啊！可以说，不过这样一来，我们这个节目要改一下了，我们不叫这个议政厅了，我们这个节目现在要改这个家庭亲子类节目。谢谢你们来到我们这里 ，Thank you very much coming to this show.
This is
现在
Victor. This
Yeah.
is the son of Connie, who is the Mandarin teacher of my daughters.
哦，嗨，你好 Victor。因为我们是一档国语的节目，我们大部分的问题呢，还是要用国语的方式，所以说要请您帮忙把我的国语的问题和我对他的一些回答的一些评述呢翻译给这个 Chrystia， 然后呢，他才能够就我们华人特别关心的一些问题呢给出一些解释和回答。好，谢谢你啊。我们刚才讲到的是 the family， 我们已经知道了你有2个可爱的女儿，还有一个6岁的小弟弟。这2个小女孩有6岁的小弟弟啊，很可爱，祝贺你。但是我们发现了一下，您的父亲和母亲其实呢也是资深的党员，但是呢非常有戏剧性的一点，一个是自由党，您的父亲是自由党，您的母亲是新民主党，所以您在家里头有2个选择嘛，到底是跟父亲的，是听爸爸的话，还是听妈妈的话？
Well, as you say, Patrick,
Yeah.
my father is a lifelong liberal. I was born in northern Alberta in Peace River, and my father ran for the Liberal Party provincially in Peace River. My mother ran for the NDP in Edmonton, Strathcona, the city that she moved to. I supported my mother when she ran, of course, just as my daughters support me.
Yeah.
But I've always been a liberal. I've always believed in the values of the Liberal Party. And for me, the central thing about the Liberal Party, what it has always stood for and fought for, is understanding the importance of 3 things. One, that you need social justice. You need to support the people. You need to support everybody in the society.
对，每个人享有同等的
And the
这样的
second
一个
is
权利。
you need the economy to grow. And so you need to believe in business,
对
in
经济发展，
entrepreneurship,
对，没错。
in hard work.
对。
And the Liberal Party, I think, is the one party that understands you need to do both. You need to have a strong, growing economy, strong business, strong entrepreneurship, strong business people. But you also need to have a just society that believes in being sure that everyone has a fair chance and everyone is supported. And the final thing that really makes me believe in the Liberal Party is my daughters are learning Mandarin, but at home, we don't speak Mandarin, and at home, we don't speak English either. The language we speak at home is Ukrainian. I am Ukrainian Canadian, And the Liberal Party was the party that introduced the idea of multiculturalism to Canada.
对
The idea that we can be fully Canadian
对
and also have our culture, our language from the countries that we came from and our parents came from. For me, being Ukrainian Canadian, that's very important personally, and I think it's the secret of Canada's success. All of us are, one of the wonderful things about Canada is there are so many people like you
对
who are deeply connected to their communities, working hard in their ethnic communities, and contributing to Canada as a whole. No other country in the world does that,
没错
and that is a liberal idea and something I'm very proud to stand for.
对，我特别同意您这个观点。第一条追求社会公平的话呢，我也赞同，因为很多的，因为我们大家生而平等嘛，所以说自由党、新民主党，包括保守党也都在提这一条价值，我们可以理解它的核心所在。但是我最不能够，特别清楚的是在您说的第二条，就是关于经济问题。你说，自由党是知道经济和发展的重要性，而很多人呢诟病自由党，就说他在搞经济是不行的，说自由党的经济政策的话呢，就是加税，加了税了之后的话呢，就是说只会花钱，不会赚钱。哎，这个问题我看了一下您的背景，您是自由党在贸易问题和这个经济问题方面的专家，所以说能不能特别是针对自由党的经济问题，您刚才说的第二条的这个经济发展这个问题上，怎么样？经济发展牵扯到平衡预算，牵扯到这个怎么样子扩大这个贸易，牵扯到怎么样调整产业结构，能不能就这个问题给我们一个比较详细的说明？
I'm very glad to have the chance to talk about the Liberal Economic Plan because I am the co-chair of Justin Trudeau's Economic Advisory Council, and putting together the economic plan has been a big part of my work.
那某种角度上你也是制定这个政策的了。
And I'm very proud of our plan. I think that we absolutely have the best plan for growth and jobs. I'd like to start with a little bit of history, Patrick, because I think you referred to history of the Liberal Party.
对
And what I'd like to say is the Liberal Party has absolutely the best economic track record of any Canadian political party. And what, as I said earlier, what has been characteristic of Liberal governments is they are simultaneously, they manage to be fiscally responsible, they manage to promote economic growth, and they also care about social justice. And I would add one additional thing which makes me so proud to be a Liberal. Just last week, actually at the beginning of this week, I was part of a group of Liberals. Justin Trudeau presented his economic team.
Yeah.
I was one of the people he singled out. And he was with Paul Martin, our former Prime Minister and our
是
former Finance
也是
Minister.
前财长和前总理。
And Paul Martin, I'm really proud to say, also talked about me and that he was pleased I'm part of this team and this new generation. I was very proud of that because something that not everyone fully appreciates is Canada, uniquely among the Western industrialized countries, did not have a banking crisis at home. And the Canadian government and the Canadian people did not have to pay their money to bail out their banks.
对
Two people deserve credit for that, Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin.
对
Because it was under a Liberal government that the same effort to deregulate the financial system, which happened in New York, which happened in London, people wanted to do it here. And I'm, as you know, Patrick, I'm a former journalist. I wrote a long story about this, so I did some research about it. And Paul Martin described to me precisely the moment when he faced this pressure and he took the decision not to do it. And we all owe him a very great debt of gratitude. And for me, that's a measure of the good economic management Canadians have had from a Liberal government. Now, looking forward, we have, I think, the best, really the only serious economic plan. And our economic plan is based on three important realities of today, three important truths of where Canada is today. Those are, first of all, our economy is in recession.
对。
Right? For the first 6 months of this year, our economy has been shrinking.
6 months.
6 months,
So
yeah.
我知道还 only 5 months. Now 6 months.
No, 6 months. We will get the data on September 1st,
Okay.
but it looks very likely that that will show 6 months of recession.
6个月的
Okay?
衰退了。
That's bad.
一
That's
般
shrinking.
一般在国际上6个月的衰退，它就可以说明是进入衰退了。
The second reality, which is really, really important, is right now, today, our budget is in deficit. We do not have a balanced budget today.
还没有，对。
And the third reality, which is really important, is, and this is something I wrote a book about, a book which has been translated into Chinese. The larger sort of economic forces over the past 3 decades have had this tendency to change the shape of the Canadian economy and the economies of the Western industrialized countries, where you've had what some economists call a winner-take-all cycle, that people at the very, very top, people who are very smart, very hardworking, also lucky, they are doing better than ever. And that's because of globalization. It's because of the technology revolution. But those same forces are hollowing out the middle class. And they have made middle class jobs much harder to get. People graduate from university, they have a very good degree, they're smart, they're hardworking. Very hard to get that first job now.
对啊。
And middle class incomes, those jobs, once you get it, it's more precarious. You might not keep it for 30 or 40 years, as used to be the case. And middle class incomes are being hollowed out. So we have a plan to address both of these things. First of all, we have two significant programs to strengthen that middle class that is getting hurt. We are going to increase the child benefit, the amount of support we give to families with children, especially families who are poor. So the poorest families now will get $6,400 a year, tax-free per child. And economists say that is enough to raise a child above the poverty line. Independent economists say that our plan will raise 315,000 Canadian children out of poverty. That's a very good thing to do.
对，这个是好事。
We will also support the middle class by cutting taxes. And we will cut taxes on people in the middle. So for incomes between $45,000 and $89,000, that chunk of income,
Okay.
we will cut tax by 7%. And that's because we understand it's harder
对。
for that slice of income, and we think the government should make it easier. The third really important thing we're going to do, which the International Monetary Fund recommends that we do, which David Dodge, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, he's for the past year been telling Canadians we should do this, which Larry Summers, my former teacher, former Secretary of the Treasury in the United States, says we should do, is we have a plan for the government to invest in infrastructure for growth. We will invest over the next 10 years an additional $60 billion in infrastructure. And the impact that will have is create the long-term economic
有一
growth
个持续稳定的
that
发
our
展。
country needs.
对。
We're in recession. We need to do something to get our economy going. And this investment, which will be in transport, we are here in Toronto right now. Everyone who lives in Toronto knows we need better transport infrastructure.
对对对。
It will be an investment in affordable housing, and it will be an investment in green infrastructure. And that is a very big commitment. No other party is making it. It's what we need for our economy to grow, to have jobs for our children, for ourselves.
对啊，我理解你说这个，就是说从长期的发展，确实是，而且你说那几个问题也确实是大问题。我们经济面临这么大的问题，可问题是，所有东西归根到底，都落实到一件事上。你就是交通也好啊，教育也好啊，然后我们是省了税，政府是少拿了钱要办这么多的事情，那这个东西就矛盾了呀。就是要办这么多， 持续发展的、可持续发展的这些事情，需要钱，钱从何来？
First of all, to pay for the middle class tax cut, we are going to increase taxes a little bit on the people at the top. So the top 1% of Canadians, if you earn $217,000 or more, that's quite a good income. Then, yeah, it is, right?
很好了。
I would say to you, congratulations. That's great that you are working so hard and you are so smart that you earn that income. And I would also say to you, we're going to ask you to contribute a little bit more to the rest of society, to your neighbors, because they need it. And our economy needs everyone to be doing well so that there is enough spending in the economy. Anyone who runs a business knows that if you're middle class, doesn't have money to spend, then your business will not do well. So one thing we will do is raise taxes a little bit on people at the very top.
这部分钱是从有钱人那块儿出来的。OK， 这是减税这块儿。
And that will exactly pay for the middle class tax cut.
OK， 好的。
And then when it comes to the infrastructure investment, that is a significant additional investment.
对啊，对啊。
And we have said that we are in deficit now, so let's be clear about that.
对啊，对啊。
But we will run a budget deficit for the next 2 years and bring the budget into balance in 2019.
啊，19年。
Our reason for doing that is twofold. One, we need to invest in growth. And we understand, we tell Canadians the truth, and we're saying our economy is in recession right now. We need to do something to help the economy to grow. And really, government has two choices. Either you can cut spending and think that will create growth, but no one who runs a business believes that that's how you get growth. Or you can invest for growth. And we believe investing is the right strategy. And what is so interesting for me right now is all the top economists in the world believe this. You know, take a look at the International Monetary Fund. In their flagship report in 2014, they argued, they said to all the countries, please invest 1% of GDP in infrastructure, it will create growth. The other really important factor, which is why we are proposing our infrastructure investment, is interest rates are very low. The borrowing cost for the government of Canada is at rock bottom. It is almost at zero. So when you think about infrastructure investment will create jobs right away. It creates the long-term structures we need for growth. And the cost to the government to borrow money for 30 years, almost zero right now. And so now is the time for us to be making this investment.
这个想法非常好，非常聪明的想法 ，very smart。就是说
Thank you.
现在在借钱成本低的时候，多借钱去，就是说去投资，然后等投资产生效益的时候的话呢，我们这个成本实际上是最低的时候。如果是利率高的时候，我们再去借钱去投资的话，就不合适了。好，我们刚才有讲到经济问题，同时的话呢，我们讲到社会公平的问题。那么这两个问题其实是有关联的，因为我们讲到经济问题的时候，我记得你在一个一个 TED 的这么一个讲演上，专门有一个视频我看了，就特别讲到了一个就是说收入怎么样子，就是说不公平的问题怎么解决这个问题。那么这和经济的问题和移民的问题是有关系的。为什么我这么说呢？因为我发现移民的这个基尼系数啊是比较大的。那个我的资料显示有0.384到0.387，而本地的人的大部分是本地出生的人的基尼系数只有0.362，也就是说嘛，越小它就是说贫富差距越不明显嘛。那么新移民贫富差距就比较明显，跟本地人比。那么我们如果有更多的新移民进来的话，那对经济是有刺激，同时对这个基尼系数只会拉高。那你到底是欢迎新移民呢，还是不欢迎新移民呢？那如果欢迎了新移民，又怎么样保证这个贫富差距问题能够不那么大呢？
To answer that question, I think it's important to start by thinking about income inequality and what is the problem with it. For me, it is not a problem that there should be very rich people in society. I think it's very good. We should be very happy to have people who are really smart and really hardworking and really successful. And I'll give you even the example of Silicon Valley. There are some protests in Silicon Valley in the United States about the income inequality created by Silicon Valley. But when you step back, what you have to say is, okay, having Silicon Valley does create more income inequality, but the only thing worse than having Silicon Valley in your country is not to have Silicon Valley. And all the countries of the world want to have these great entrepreneurs who we see emerging in places like Silicon Valley, also in places like Toronto, in places like Waterloo. For me, the reason to be concerned about income inequality is that what we're seeing with the shape of the economy is something that economists describe as this sort of winner-take-all spiral, where if you are really smart and really hardworking and really lucky, you have a good idea, you can make a fortune faster than ever before in history. Think of Mark Zuckerberg in Facebook. Or one of my favorite examples is WhatsApp. This was a company built by a young immigrant from Ukraine. 2 years after he founded it, it had 50 employees, and he sold it for $22 billion.
巨无霸公司
Right? And that's because of the combination of the technology revolution and globalization. So, but that's not, I don't think that we should be worried about that aspect of the economic transformation today. The part we need to be worried about is the hollowed out middle class. The fact that it's harder for most people who graduate from university, who are hardworking students, you know, we all know it from our friends and our children,
对
to get their first job.
对对对
It's harder to keep your job. And those incomes in that middle section are not rising at the same rate as the economy has been growing. So what does immigration have to do with all of this? It is absolutely true that most immigrants, when they come here, have a low income.
对
They've just arrived.
没错
I know this. Both of my parents were born outside Canada. And my mother's parents didn't speak English when they came here. They had been educated people at home. They had to do blue-collar manual jobs here. My
是
grandfather worked building roads.
新一
I
代
think
移民
it's
嘛
a story all immigrant families know.
对
And that's how they started. And they worked very hard, and they sent all of their 6 children to university. That is the immigrant story. Actually, for economic growth for all of us, I believe we need to increase immigration to our country. When you talk about what are the drivers, what are the forces that create economic growth, one is new technologies.
对新
A
技能
second one is investment in growth, and we're going to do that with our infrastructure plan. A third is demographics. What is behind China's great economic rise? 1 billion Chinese people. And Canada has the potential. We have a huge country,
对
and we are very good at absorbing immigrants.
对
Compare us to the United States, where they have all these fights about immigration.
Yeah.
Compare us to Europe,
Yeah.
where they are so angry about immigrants. Canada, we understand all of us are immigrants, and we know how to get along. So I believe our government actually today pretends to be friendly with immigrants, but if you actually look at the immigration system, it has become harder to move to Canada than it used to be. And what I believe we need to do is see immigration as a source of enriching our country culturally, but also a real source of economic growth.
哦，我知道您还有一个就是关于贸易方面，特别是国际贸易方面，在将来的经济发展当中会扮演一个什么样子的角色？现在的比例是多少？有没有什么计划来刺激贸易的发展？
Very good question about the international economy, Canada's role in the international economy, and the impact that has on us. We are a very big country. We're an amazing country, but we are a relatively small share of the world economy. We are the 11th sized economy in the world.
Oh.
And so we depend very heavily on international trade. And trade is very good for Canada. Jobs in export sectors pay about 50% as much as jobs in the domestic-oriented businesses. So trade is essential, and trade is great for Canada. One of the reasons that we have put together our infrastructure plan is because our recession in Canada is particularly severe. This is a made in Canada recession. It is Stephen Harper's recession. And we are the only G7 country in recession right now. Having said that, the world economic outlook right now is a little bit worrying.
Yeah.
We've seen some tremendous stock market volatility. Your viewers will be well aware of the problems and the slowdown in China. And so that is actually why the IMF has been encouraging countries to invest for growth.
Yeah.
Because there is a broader problem. What economists would say is there's a shortage of demand right now in the global economy. And so what Canada is doing is absolutely what the Liberals would like Canada to do is absolutely right. And actually, as I said, Larry Summers, Harvard economist, former Secretary of the Treasury, when we announced our plan, he said it's a very good plan. The United States should be doing this too.
Oh.
Now, yeah, that's a pretty good endorsement, isn't it?
Okay.
Now, when it comes to international trade, I think that we should be doing much more. And I will give you one specific example. In March, the founding members of the Infrastructure Bank for Asia were announced. This is an initiative, another infrastructure project. This is an initiative led by China. And the idea is that, you know, just as Liberals believe there are important infrastructure projects in Canada, the Chinese initiative is to say, we have a great need for infrastructure in Asia, and let's bring the countries of the world together to do this. A great opportunity for Canada, a great opportunity to to use Canadian expertise abroad, bring the money home. And as it happens, we're very lucky because our city of Toronto is probably the world's top center for expertise in infrastructure investment. We have some major pension funds here whose specialty, like the CPPIB, the Canadian Pension Fund, like Ontario Teachers, like OMERS, they specialize in infrastructure investing. So we have the skills for it. At the end of March, that was a deadline for countries to put up their hand and say, we want to be a founding member of this infrastructure bank. Great Britain said, yes, we want to be a member. France said, yes, we want to be a member.
对，大家都跟了。
Germany said yes. Taiwan said yes.
对。
Norway said yes. Israel said yes.
对。
Do you know what Canada said?
这个我知道。对。
We chose not to be a founding member. To me, it's a huge mistake, huge opportunities for Canada, opportunities which, because we have infrastructure expertise, and you know what? In Canada, we also have Asia expertise. We have a tremendous number of Canadians, like people watching now, who are comfortable working in Asia, who speak Mandarin, who speak Cantonese. So why did Canada say we wouldn't be part of this? I don't understand. Liberals would change that.
对这个亚投行这个事情的话呢，确实是有些时候我们也是有一点困惑啊。不过你刚才这个问题可能除了经济上的考虑之外呢，还有一些政治上的考虑。那么就是说对华关系，它一直是一个比较敏感的一个问题。然后我发现您这个简历里头对华关系倒没有说到太多。我发现了一个，就是说我刚才也介绍了，普京总统不太喜欢您啊，他把您给拒之门外，不让您进去。一共就13个加拿大人有这个殊荣。那么这是怎么一回事儿？你为什么因为普京很多中国人认为他是中国现在的一个盟友，那你跟普京搞得这么僵，那么是不是对中国也不友好？会不会有这种考虑？
Putin didn't explain to me personally why he banned me. But I think it's because I have been outspoken in my support for Ukrainian sovereignty and Ukrainian democracy. And as you know, Russia has invaded Ukraine. I have spoken often at many actually international conferences with Chinese diplomats about the situation in Ukraine and the Russian invasion. And what they point out, which I think is very important, is that Chinese policy is very different from Russian policy. And the Chinese government has been very clear about its policy of what they call the peaceful rise of China. And very clear, and I think this is very smart, that the Chinese government understands that China is growing. China is a huge country, and the Chinese government believes that it is important for the rest of the world not to feel threatened by the rise of China, and indeed to feel that the rise of China can be mutually beneficial. And so the Chinese government makes it a point of saying, we believe in a peaceful rise, we do not believe in invading our neighbors.
我们这叫和平崛起。
We do not believe in an anti-Western policy. Now, I wrote a book about the collapse of communism in Russia, and that book was translated into Chinese.
哦，有中文版的书啊。
Yeah, Sale of the Century. And after it was published, many reporters from mainland China interviewed me. And they were very interested in the book because of the comparisons, the similarities and the differences between the post-communist transition in Russia and China. And I think it's important to understand how very big the differences are. And what we see today in Russia is a government which is invading its neighbors, is pursuing a policy very hostile to the West. And I think it's actually very important for Western countries like Canada, particularly at this moment, to have a very strong diplomatic outreach to China and to say to China, we understand the differences between Russia and China, and we do not want you to feel that in any way we are lumping these two countries together.
那么谢谢您配合我们今天的访谈，也谢谢您给我们介绍了很多我们没有想到的知识，没有想到的一些要点和一些知识。那么希望您以后有机会啊，还要经常来到我们的节目，向我们的华裔观众朋友啊，向我们更多的朋友来介绍我们需要了解的一些知识啊。非常感谢来参加我们的议政厅的栏目。Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Thank you. Okay.